Welcome to this video. In this video, I would like to explain you what you can do if a SAP user is locked. Enjoy this video and let's get started. So basically there are three possibilities that you can use to check if a SAP user is locked. The first one is directly in the SAP logon. So there you double click on one connection and then you try to log in with your SAP user. So in this case with Andreas G2, and then I type in my password, and then down here I can see that the user is logged. I have to notify the person responsible. So in most cases it's the SAP basis or your administration department that you have to contact to see what the reason behind this log is. The second option, how you can identify if a SAP user is logged, is in a specific transaction. So for this, I will log in with a different SAP user, and in here I will open up a transaction. It's the SEU01. You can type it in the command field, and in here you can enter your SAP user, and then you can, under this button, log unlock, there you can see what happened to this user. In this case we see the reason of the log, and now we see that this SAP user is logged by the system manager. If you want to, with this button, you can directly unlock this SAP user, or you could also hit the F7 key on your keyboard. The third option to check if a SAP user is logged is directly in a specific database table. So for this, we open up the transaction code SE16N to enter the data browser. And in here, you enter a specific database table. It's the USR02. And under user, there you enter your specific user ID, in this case, Andreas G2. Then you could hit the F8 key on your keyboard or click on this button to execute the selection. And in this column locked, there you see that currently this SAP user is locked. With the F4 help, you also see the reason for this lock. So in this case it's 64. It's locked locally by administrator. If this column would be set to 0, then you directly see that this SAP user is not locked. So now there is one option that you can use to unlock your SAP user. We have already seen it. We were going back to the transaction SU01, and in here, as mentioned, you type in your SAP user, Andreas G2, and then you click on this button to unlock your SAP user, or you could also use the key combination Control F5. And here you again see the reason for the lock, and with this button unlock or F7, then you see that this user is unlocked. And once again, now if I open up the SAP logon, double click on the connection and type in this SAP user ID and my password, now I see that this SAP user is unlocked and can start working. There's one profile parameter that unlocks automatically the logged SAP users at midnight. And I would like to show you this profile parameter in the transaction code RZ11. And in here you can enter login/failed_user_auto_unlock. And now we go into the display mode of this profile parameter. And if we open up the documentation with this button, then we see a well-written documentation of this profile parameter. So what we now see is that this value is 0. So currently it is disabled. But if you would say set it to 1, then the logs are automatically removed and the SAP user automatically unlocked. And keep in mind that the number of failed login attempts will remain as they are. They won't be reset. but in here you can quite nicely unlock the SAP users automatically. And there is one BAPI, a function module that you can use to unlock a SAP user. It's the function module BAPI underscore user underscore unlock. And in here I have created an ABAP report in the transaction code SE38 to loop over all the existing SAP users that are currently locked. So where this attribute is not equal to 0, and I will loop over those SAP users and unlock them. It's just a sample ABAP report that you can use, that you can enhance if you need it. You can get this ABAP report in my German SAP blog. I will put the link in the video description, and in here you get this ABAP report that you can copy this code to clipboard and modify it if needed. And now I would like to show you a possibility that you can use to change the value directly in the data browser. So to do this, we move over to the SAP system and execute the transaction code SC16N. And in here, we type in the table USR02 and type in our user. So for example, Andreas G2. And then you can change this value directly in the debugger. And please, 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 a very important disclaimer in this point. We are now changing directly this value in the database table. So please keep in mind that this change will be logged. It can be analyzed with some tools I would like to show you in a couple of seconds by your SAP Basis department. And for example, if you have an audit in your SAP system, then this will also be logged. And please only do this if you are 100% sure what you're doing. And please keep in mind that we're doing a really sensitive and important change on this table. But for some cases, if just you're on a development system, if you just want to try this out and you want to learn, then you can do this. But please don't do this directly in the productive system. And in here, you have to switch on the debugging. So we enter the prefix /h in the command field, hit enter, and directly you can see that now debugging is switched on. And now we execute the selection, and then the debugger is started. And under variable, there we enter gd minus sub edit, and the second one is gd minus edit, and enter to get those two variables. And with this button change field content, there we just simply set it to x and enter, and the second one also x and enter. And then what you can do is you can execute and finish the ABAP debugger with this button continue, or you could also use the F8 key on your keyboard. And now what we can see is now this entry is shown in the edit mode, and we can make some changes. So for example, we could change this value log to, for example, 64 as we've seen previously, and then we can click on this save button, or you could also use the key combination control S. And now we see that one row has been changed. And once again, if we try to log in with this user in our SAP logon, so once again I open this up, then I type in this user ID with my password. Now we see again that this user is logged. And if I go back to the data browser and change this, for example, again to 0, and save it and try once again to log in, then we see that now this SAP user is again unlocked and can start working. So for this, I'm logging off from this SAP user. And as mentioned, you can log this change. So for example, in a specific ABAP report, and to execute this, we open up the transaction code SA38, and in here we enter an ABAP report, the RKSE16N underscore CD underscore display. Then you can click on this button, or you could hit the F8 key on your keyboard, and under changed table there we can enter USR02, and then we can execute the selection, and down here we exactly see that in this table this user has made some changes on this date to this time. The second option is to see this change in a specific database table. So once again, we open the data browser and the transaction code SE16N, and then we enter a table. It's the SE16N underscore CD underscore key. And once again, under table, we enter USR02, and then we can execute this selection. And now we're seeing exactly the same results. If we want to analyze what kind of data has been changed, then we're going one step back, and therefore we are using a different table. It's the SE16N underscore CD underscore data. And in here under table, we're entering once again USR02 and execute the selection. And here we are seeing what kind of changes have been made. And here we're exactly seeing what the changes are. So again, keep this in mind when changing the data directly over the SE16N in the debugger. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed this video and learned how you can check if a SAP user is logged and how you can unlock it easily. Hit the like button, add a comment, subscribe for free, and then see you in the next video.